Hey, everybody, welcome back. This is Camille Essick. I'm host of the Speaker Podcast. This is the podcast where innovators and creators connect. I'm so excited. We have a phenomenal conversation lined up for you all. But before we do that, go right now. I need you to hop in, share with someone that you care or love. Go to Facebook at the Speaker Podcast. We're also on YouTube at Camille Essick and also on Instagram at Camille.Essick. Follow me online on my website at CamilleEssick.com. And I would love to hear from you. Send an email to me at thespeakerpodcast@gmail.com. If you haven't heard, y'all, I just released a new ebook. It's so phenomenal. It's called Women Empowered Unleashed. It's available right now on my website, in addition to my ladies e-course. So we're gonna hop right into everything, just because we have a lot to cover. So I have three phenomenal gentlemen here, and they are blazing the trail by leaps and bounds in the world of education. And tonight, I call them the squad. The squad is here, and we're going to discuss the impact of Black men in education. So with that being said, I'm going to do round robin, and I would love for everyone to introduce themselves, starting with Marvin Boatman.
Hello, everyone. My name is Marvin Boatman. I'm originally from Tallahassee, Florida. I moved here a year ago to Atlanta. So I'm happy to be here. And thank you again, Camille, for the invitation.
Now, Marvin, you can't just downplay the introduction, because brother is clean every week, and you're also a stylist. So we need to unpack that for a minute before we just hop. We just can't just skate right over that.
Gotcha. So I'm an educator. I am a behavioral specialist here. Well, not here, but in McDonough, Georgia, at Henry County School of Scholars. I'm also, as Camille has mentioned, a fashion consultant as well. So fellas, if you know anyone or if you need some tips, let me know. But I'm definitely grateful for this opportunity.
And he styles ladies as well. So if you're looking for a look, ladies, reach out to him. Very respectful, clean every week, and I can attest to that.
Thank you so much, Camille.
And then we have HBCU pride in the room. Dr. Kent Wallace, please introduce yourself.
Hello. I'm hearing a little of an echo on your end.
I am too.
Okay.
One thing, if you're not speaking, please mute your mic when you're not talking. Maybe that will help.
Okay. So my name is Dr. Bryant Kent Wallace. I am an associate professor of physics at Fisk University. I am the discipline coordinator of physics, which is our equivalent of a department chair of physics, but I am also the dean of graduate studies at Fisk University. And we are in Nashville, Tennessee.
You got to talk about those projects as well.
So many. So I head our MESA, which is a grant that was supported by the Department of Education for the Minority Science and Engineering Improvement Program. It's called STEM Trek, or STEM through Rocketry, Electronics, Engagement, and Coding. And it's basically to help retain people of color in STEM-related fields so that they can go into the STEM workforce. I also had a grant with Dr. Damo in chemistry. It's a Department of Energy grant in nuclear physics to bring more diversity to the field of nuclear physics research. And also the Tennessee Space Grant, which is to support, with our institution, supporting more participation in STEM-related materials. I am also the treasurer of the National Society of Black Physicists.
My inner nerd. Oh my gosh, I love it. I know a real scientist, y'all. I'm sorry, the nerd in me is just tickled right now because when I say his mind is so brilliant, and I love that, and I love what he's doing for we're going to get into that, but just the representation for us in the area of STEM and science and all things nerd. Dr. Wallace, kudos to you. Thank you for what you're doing for us in that field. And last but not least, we have Dr. Kevin McKenzie. Please introduce yourself.
My name is Dr. Kevin McKenzie. I'm a native of Chattanooga, Tennessee. Just moved back from Nashville. I've been working for a school district for about 12 years now, working in Hamilton County. I'm a seed coordinator for the district, which is social emotional academic development. What we do is we deal with personalization and make sure that we're matching that with our academic, because you can't get to our kids and teach them if you can't help them socially.
Awesome. And then also, please discuss the projects and things you worked on as well.
Well, one of the projects I know things that we're working on is trying to mentor kids that may have went into alternative schools. Now we're trying to help transition them back into regular schools, but also doing restorative practice where we're making sure that we're returning kids back to learn and repairing the harm or repairing the relationship between the peers and the teachers. But also working on my book, which is 1.5 to doctorate. I graduated from high school with a 1.5. And so I want to make sure that we're helping our students to understand that it doesn't matter how you start, it's always about how you finish.
Awesome. And I love that project. And that's something I also want us to touch on during this conversation. Gentlemen, as we hop right in, those of you tuning in, please be sure to like, comment, and share. One of the things I really want to discuss with you all, Dr. Wallace, and it's something that is not talked about a lot, is the representation and educational spaces in the worlds of STEM and STEAM, and from K all the way up through higher academia. So you kind of unpack what that has meant to you and your inspiration as far as getting into the that field, please?
Sure. In my career, I can think of some very poignant people, particularly once I got to college, that were a part of rearing me to become, a physicist. And in my career, I've also noticed that the statistics already show that there's little representation by comparison of Black males in education, and even far fewer when it comes to STEM. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I have noticed about a lot of our scientists that are in college and going on to graduate school, the discipline kind of sucks up those that are in it and sends them into research laboratories, national laboratories, into the professorate. But there's really not a pipeline that rears them back into the classroom. It's kind of like a very small niche of individuals that have a love of science, but also a love of education. And when it comes to computer science, oh my gosh, it's even more challenging because, students that'll come out in computer science might be swept up by Google, and they start off with six-figure salaries. And so when you look at the pay scales between the private sector and education, you can start to see, like, when it comes to these specialized areas of STEM, it's just such a competitive arena that the few that you have, it's hard to have those pipelines in place that would rear them back into the classroom.
Wow. And so then going deeper into that, as far as Black and brown children not having access to STEM programs or even aware the field is available to you. So what do you say to parents if you notice their child may have a gifting in that area and or just wanting to introduce them to that field as an option?
Well, be very proactive. I have a saying that you will never aspire to things that you don't know about. And so a young person, the research shows that students that if they don't have an interest in STEM between 4th and 8th grade, they're just not going to. So the earlier they can be exposed to it, the better. And sometimes you have to be proactive. Let's just say that you're at a head middle school that's a couple of blocks away from Fisk University. Call up the university, find out who is in the science departments and say, hey, I would love to bring my son or my daughter up here to, participate if you have any programs. Like we have the rocket team at Fisk, which is the Fisk Aerospace Technology Team. And if ever schools say, hey, I have a young person, could they interact with your team? We welcome them. I remember a few years ago, meaning maybe 7. No, it was well more than that. There was a young man who was at a private school, Black, but he was at a private school where he was a minority. And his father was like, I would really like my son to work with your rocket team because he needs to have role models.
Mhm.
And we were like, we'd love to have him. And it turned out he not only helped us build our rocket for the NASA competition, he came to the launch at our launch, the NASA launch, and helped us launch that rocket. And it so influenced him. Now, he didn't go into science, but he did aspire and ascend to be a very good academic student. And he today is a graduate with his bachelor's and master's of the University of Wisconsin, and now is a, if I remember correctly, if I'm calling it correctly, a housing broker in the Chicagoland area, and it has a very lucrative career. So I'm just very proud to just have him have the opportunity to be around students of color that meant to excel and not be scared of participating in fields that are normally dominated by those that are not of color.
I love that. And the fact that you mentioned fear, I definitely want Marvin to tap into that as far as you getting them at an earlier age, as far as your space in education with behavior health sciences. When you see students exhibiting fear, that they see something that, I don't know if I'm good at math or science, I don't know. Marvin and you too, Dr. McKenzie, please chime in as far as gravitating to that child, building the confidence to say, hey, you can do this, you can do STEM, or whatever the subject may be. Marvin, please take the helm on that.
Definitely, I think it's very important that you form a relationship with that child so that you can be able to find out what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, and seeing how you can draw out, because that's one of the things we do is kind of map out a plan for that child and kind of see where they are and give them that boost, give them that extra attention that they may need, find out, what's going on at home maybe. That can also help out as well. Just like I said, getting to know that child and finding out how you can impart, great values for them.
Dr. McKenzie?
Yeah, I piggyback off that. I would say that with our elementary schools, we really try to make sure that we set goals and we try to get them that person in the school. Find that person that they actually can gravitate towards, because everybody got to have that person in the school that they can actually go to. And so in high school, the high school I work with and I graduated from, I have 5 different mentor programs. So you try to make sure that you push those kids into urban league, whether they be on the mayor's council. You really try to find their strengths. You really try to figure out what it is they want to do. So if it's something that a student is telling me they want to do, and I know a lot of people in different areas, whether it be culinary, whether it be music, a lot of our kids love to rap, but they need to learn poetry so they can really understand the words that they're actually saying. But also they want to make beats. We had a young student who came in 9th grade. Regular school wasn't conducive for him. So we put him into Opportunity High School. This kid is about to graduate next year early. But we have to see that on the front end, because sometimes we got to understand that the distractions and the social interactions in certain schools or in environments are not conducive for our kids. So we got to put them in places so they can be successful.
That's good. And then tapping into that, something you said made me think about, and you all can chime in, as far as we're seeing over the last 20 years, there's been lower graduation rates for Black men on college campuses and universities. And there are so many contributing factors to that. And so something that you said as far as graduating with a 1.5 to now matriculating to a PhD. And Dr. McKenzie, please kick off this portion of the conversation. And then Marvin and Dr. Wallace, please chime in as far as what do you see as contributing factors? Does it start in elementary, middle school, and high school? Where are we losing our brothers where they're not crossing the stage at the rate as far as Black women?
I would say it starts off with ACEs, which is adverse childhood experiences, that starts at an early age. And as an adult going into college, we still deal with ACEs. So I don't know if you know ACEs, which is adverse childhood experiences, and a lot of different people have gone through them. But that and also the financial opportunity for students, and then also students not knowing where to go get that money or financial aid. I'll say an individual student who could have went to college and graduated didn't know that they was first generational student and that they could have got money for that. So it's really just connecting to a guidance counselor that really works for our students, because I will tell you this, I never met my guidance counselor when I was in high school. And so it was a position. I'm just being honest. But right now we have career and college and career goal individuals. So it's just really connecting those people now and understanding that you can go to a 2-year college and transition to a 4-year college. We have so many different opportunities now, but we're really trying to push our Black males because their grade point average is so low. And then when they take ingenuity, they choose to get a lower grade instead of actually taking the class over and getting a higher grade. So then you can't get those opportunities, whether it be scholarships, the ACT. We're not good test takers. So I put the first ACT program in an elementary school in Nashville. And so we started that in Nashville elementary school, and then we moved up to middle school because repetition can be sometimes the best teacher. And so I think with the ACT scores and making sure that you have access to those funds, we got to know where it is, and we got to not be stingy and let our students know what it is they can have.
Mm-hmm. Marvin?
I really think it goes back to parents. Let's start there. And the motivation that they give their kids on a day-to-day basis. Of course, we know we got single parents who are working, don't really have time sometimes to have that chit chat with their child. I think it's just more important that with the parents, and then like Dr. McKenzie said, finding a counselor that can really pour into you throughout your, from middle school to high school, getting them to understand the importance of graduating, for us guys, let's be honest, we sometimes think we're not cool enough because I had a cousin, for instance, that was smart as a whip, never had to take a test, never had to study, but always passed all his classes. But because his peers picked on him, he stopped, being smart, if you will. He wanted to be a thug. He wanted to hang out with the cool guys. For you women, y'all have that, if you will. It's more catty, but y'all still are focused on, what needs to happen and where you need to go. Unlike us men, we want to be cool. We want to be in the game. We want to be accepted to a lot of things. So we have more of a challenge, if I can say that, and you guys please help me out. We have more of a challenge of moving forward and understanding the importance of graduating and being the first one of your family to graduate. So I think it goes, like I said, from parents having a village. We don't have that village like we used to, and that plays a big part. Let's be honest, we have kids raising kids. We don't want anybody to say nothing to our kids. I remember growing up, and I stayed in the projects. If I got in trouble, everybody on my street knew that, and I got a whooping from the top of the street to the bottom till I got to my house. So those are some of the things that we're missing and that we actually really need. I'm gonna say this last thing with my 2 kids. I have a daughter and a son. I'm more disciplined with my son more than my daughter, and their mother will always ask, why are you so hard on him? I say, you have to understand that we have to be with our sons to give them that extra push for them to understand that I'm not being mean, but I want you to be better than your dad. I don't want you to be like your dad. I want you to be better. So those are some of the things that we wrestle with and just being suppressed as men or kids, period. Not knowing how to communicate, how to articulate what we're going through and what we need to get to the next level. I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
No, that's really good. That's really good.
Good.
I think that's a point that does need to be considered as far as I don't know, we getting feedback from somebody. The toughness as far as mothers having on their sons because of those things. And we are seeing the prisons a pipeline with that, and then cutting out on population as far as in classrooms, because a lot of young boys do get in trouble and fall through the cracks. And so then that demographic is lost, further decreasing the representation on colleges and universities. Dr. Wallace, what do you have to say?
Well, it's a lot of factors, and we've touched on them. You could literally go hours for it, but I'll tell
Yeah.
you that first off, that the thing about kids wanting the black men wanting to be accepted and be cool, you know, I think it's a little better now that there's sometimes people will brag, oh, the nerdy people, but back in my day, nerd would have been like having the sign of the beast on your head. You know, it wasn't rewarded that you were an intellectual. I got made fun of in high school all the time because I was the one guy in a public school that came to school in a shirt and a tie. And so it is a bit of serendipity that I am even here. Because when I turned on the television and I looked at Nova, which was the only science show, we didn't have Discovery Channel and all that. I never saw black scientists.
Mhm.
They were always white. Maybe they were women, but so it's that access. And then you have a lot of the media and so forth today that makes things look more fun than science or being intelligent, being smart. I remember a story that a teacher, when I was working on my doctorate, I had a class in education because I do physics and astronomy, but I also relate the education side of it. And a heartbreaking story is one of the students in there who used to teach in Chicago public schools said there was a young man who got an A on a test, and he brought it up to her, and he was like, "Would you do me a favor when you give me my grades back? Could you just put an F on the paper?" And she was like, "Why? You earned an A." And he said, "Well, I don't want the kids to see this because if they see that I'm smart, they won't like me, and I want to fit in." And so there's a lot of this that it's simply perception. And I'll give you and I'll show you a perception that people don't really realize exists, but it does. If I had said to you, or if someone said, "Hey, I don't know how to read," they wouldn't be proud of that. They would be embarrassed that they were illiterate and didn't know how to read, so they'd probably try to hide it. But if you say, "Oh yeah, oh you're in physics, yeah, math wasn't my thing," the first thing someone's going to say is, "Yeah, man, math ain't my thing either." There's like an acceptable fear of math-intensive subject matter. And we have to get beyond that because what Dr. McKenzie and I have in common, I was very poor in math when I was in high school. I took the ACT and got a 4 out of
What?
36 in
What?
math.
You're brilliant. I would never have guessed that.
It has been a very long journey. I ended up going to Grambling State University, where we don't use this term anymore, but I had to go to remedial math, which is the math that you should have known getting into college. And we had 3 levels, 3, 2, and 1.
Wow.
They put me in the lowest level, and I had to take 3 semesters getting up to college math before I could even get into physics classes.
Wow.
And so I say this to say that it was because I didn't think I was smart enough. I thought math was that thing that other people did. And if you did have some black professors, they were the exception to the rule. And what I had to find out is I had stereotype threat. This term didn't come around until later, but I had to realize that if you do not believe you are smart, you will facilitate your own expectation.
Wow.
And so we have to have the opportunity for people to interact and show that, one, change this perception that being intelligent is not a cool thing, that in fact it is a cool thing. We have to get away from toxic masculinity, that we have to be thinking that to be a man, it's only based on physical prowess and not just intellectual prowess. And I'm telling you, we're only scratching the surface of the many things that the black male has to deal with as they're coming up and in the field of education. And then lastly, I'll say, look at how many women teachers there are in public schools versus men. So there's a lack of role models in the public schools to begin with. And I already, highlighted how that pipeline is just dripping, particularly in STEM. And so you have all of these factors going on that kind of lead you to what we have going on today.
Yes, that's a really good point. 2 things, and maybe I'm different. So growing up, little girl, middle school, high school, college, whatever, I always liked the smart guys. You could be cute, but if your grades were bad, whatever. But if you were handsome and smart, I would be like, "Oh man, he got an A in physics." I remember one time at MTSU, I'm not going to say their name, we're still cool to this day, and he was like, "Oh, I got an A on my physics test," and the whole time I was just like, "Gee, really?" Because I was always attracted to a very intelligent person because I'm, intellectual. And so it's like, can you hold your own in a conversation? Do you mentally stimulate me? So I always thought smart guys were really cool. Second thing, I like what you pointed out, Dr. Wallace, in terms of representation as far as Black men in the classroom, which leads to our next talking point. Don't agree with everything he says, but even a broken clock is correct twice a day. So Dr. Umar Johnson, he was pointing out the fact that the lack of representation in the classroom with white female counterparts and this fear of Black boys and the labeling of them in the classroom tends to set a stain on them throughout education. And we need to have more Black men in the classroom because a lot of Black boys or children, period, do not have a father in the home. And so having a father figure in the classroom, as far as a form of authority, a voice, and influence, makes a bigger and sometimes even greater impact on students. I remember throughout my entire educational resume, I didn't have my first Black professor until I got to MTSU freshman year English. And then I didn't have another one until I took African American Studies, Dr. Bakari. So I do want to open up this door. Marvin, please kick things off as far as how you notice your presence in the classroom as far as impact and response to students. You're on mute.
A Black male is very important in the classroom. It sets the tone. And no offense to women, some women can walk in and demand a room, and it don't always happen. A man can come right behind them and say the same thing. And I don't know if it's the voice, I don't know if it's the deepness, I don't know if it's the sternness, but it makes a difference. Even me being in the classroom right now, I can talk to a kid and get a better response than a woman can. And I think that's just us knowing each other and them being comfortable with us. And again, it's all about that trust. Is what they're looking for, that they can trust someone to talk to have a conversation with. So definitely it's very, 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 very important that a male is in the classroom or is seen in the environment.
Okay. Dr. McKenzie?
I totally agree. But I first want to say I need y'all to come and visit my high school, Bryant High School in Chattanooga, Tennessee. We have about 45% males in our school. And I just want to say that, but I am the student that I serve, and that's what I believe. And so when we step into their hallways, I mean, the kids, they understand how we make them feel safe. And also, like today, I'll give you an example. We're actually, it's a sad time right now because we just lost one of our students yesterday. It was murdered at the bus stop.
Oh.
And so today was like, a day where we just wanted to make sure our kids were safe. We wanted to make sure that they needed counseling. We dispatched all our counselors and from the district, social workers, and they came. But I just wanted to say, but the Black men that we do have in our school building, we make sure that our young Black girls or our girls, period, whatever they may be, we have a lot of Hispanic students and white students we do have, but it's predominantly Black. And our Black males, they really adhere to us as Black men. So we have our Black coaches, we have, our assistant principals, myself working for the district. It's that particular presence is so important. And I will tell you this, those kids, they adhere to it and they want it. They want to be loved. They want I tell you, this young Black man, and I'll be done. This young Black man at one of the elementary schools that I mentor, they talked about this little boy. They keep telling me he was a crack baby. Mama is on drugs, all that. I said, I don't want to hear that. I put the kid in the group. We did restorative, and that kid came up and gave me a hug. Just met me. He felt the energy. And so I said, I don't want to hear what y'all story y'all got about him, but I'm just saying we need to really be able to reach into our kids like that and be able to and come from that story and have them to build and tell us their story.
Yeah, that's good. And even now with even being able to hug a student, because there are so many instances of inappropriate contact with educators and students, that a lot of times that hug is the only hug that child gets, because they deal with touch deprivation at home. A lot of Black girls and Black boys statistically do not receive physical affection on the same rates as their white counterparts. And so you even have to be mindful of that. But when you can, how much that genuine, honest hug can shift the trajectory of the child. So that's really good. Dr. Wallace?
I'll first say, Dr. McKenzie, will just set a date. I'll be happy to come down and meet your students. It will be a pleasure. Do some science demonstrations, the whole nine. So it's hard to even know where to start, because this is just such a big thing. It's part of my lived experience. It's a part of what the students I engage. But I will tell you this representation and the opportunity. I want to tell you two quick stories. I was asked, it took them 3 years, but they wanted me to come to speak to a school in Massachusetts. Now, the school was predominantly white, but they had some minority students, but they said they really wanted me to come and talk to them about science. Long story short, they worked it out that I could come there, and I spoke to the school, did a demonstration on physics and astronomy, and I spoke to the entire school in the morning, and then I went to their classes individually in the afternoon. And it was a great experience. But one of the things that stood out, and I remember there were a couple of Black students over to the right when I was talking, and the sense of pride that they had just looking at this person that looked like them, talking to them about physics and astronomy, I could see it in their eyes. A year later, I thought, well, that you bring in another speaker. They asked me to come back. And I said, sure, I'll come back. They said, well, you're speaking in the afternoon this time. Would you like to have lunch? And I said, sure. Do you want to go out or do you want to go to the CAF? And I said, I'll go to the CAF. I'd like to sit with the students. I walked in and someone yelled, it's him. And the entire room stood up in a standing ovation. And in that moment, it just became clear my purpose in life, because that's the kind of response you think of from a basketball player. That's a response that you think of a rap artist or a performing person. But this is someone who they knew solely as a scientist. And that was moving for me, much less how proud I was that I could make that interesting for them. And the other little quick story I wanted to tell you is I was asked to do a science camp in Ohio. And they had two camps. There was the science camp, but then there was a camp for at-risk children. When I say at-risk, one of the students, the counselor came up and said, hey, that student you just spoke to 2 days ago was arrested for aggravated assault. That kid could not have been more than 12 years old. And I remember, and I was like, whoa. But okay, so I talked to them and I was like, let's talk about astronomy. Let's talk about black holes. Now, you would think these at-risk kids would give a hoot. But when I started asking them, talking about galaxies and supermassive black holes, they were starting to ask questions that would be challenging to an astrophysicist. It's like they knew things about astronomy, and it was like it told me that people are craving to be engaged. Mm-hmm. But sometimes so many of our populations are already dismissed because they're written off, because they just assume because they're of this demographic or this socioeconomic group that they're not going to go anywhere. And it just told me that if they are engaged and you treat them like humans and you don't come in with the expectation that they're underperformers, but you treat them with the expectation that they can comprehend, they embrace that, because they will literally become the expectation that is projected upon them. So if you project low expectation, they will realize that. But if you project high expectation, they will rise to that.
I love that. And something I do want us to kind of unpack just a little bit more when you mention getting the applause in the calf, because it's very true. Athletes, rappers, entertainers are celebrated more than our scientists, our doctors, and our lawyers. And I feel that exposure creates interest. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on, Dr. Wallace. We've known kind of each other probably over the last 10 to 15 years, but just following you on social media and just seeing like, oh man. And then God has blessed me with this platform. And I was like, I have to get Dr. Wallace on here because I think parents watching, they may catch the replay later. I know it's Wednesday. A lot of people are at Bible class, but for them to see you and show their children, hey, look at him. He's a scientist. He's a physicist. Look, and just have that exposure. So that's one of the reasons why I was so adamant about you coming to this space and this conversation tonight. Also, number two, our educators are not paid enough. We pay our athletes millions of dollars, endorsements. However, you all have their minds in the palm of your hand. And I do want to unpack on how important it is for parents to continue to advocate for our educators, K, all the way up into higher academia in our college and universities. So, Marvin, can you kind of touch on the importance of parents? How can I want to say the word co-parenting, but it is like parenting with the parent as far as your child outside of the classroom, and really advocating for advocating for educators outside the classroom after the school bell has rung, and then reinforcing those lessons that you've instilled in them throughout the day.
Say that question one more time.
Just the importance of parents advocating along with you, as a parent, because a lot of parents feel like, oh well, the teacher's supposed to teach them, but you don't show up to PTA. If the teacher says something to your child, you're coming up to the school cussing the teacher out, but actually being an advocate for the educator outside the classroom.
I think, and probably both of the gentlemen will agree with me, when the COVID was here, we got so many thank yous, and I'm sorry, and I didn't know it was this hard, and I didn't know they act this way. We got a lot of apologies once the parents, and you can tell those parents who were involved with their kids throughout school period up until COVID-19, and those who were out of reach with their child and didn't know apple from pear. And so it's so important that the parents advocate for their child as well. Advocate for the teachers as well. How can I put it? We don't get paid. And so we have to, this is not for the weak. And I'm kind of fumbling because there's so much I want to say pertaining to this, but to allow the other gentlemen to chime in, the parents really have to understand what we go through on a daily basis with these kids, and how they're with us more than they're with them. And it's so important that they understand that I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. They have to understand the importance of the teachers in helping us with their child. I'm gonna leave it at that.
That's what
I mean. So I agree with what he's saying. I wanted to pick up on my brother. So I know that it's a partnership at the end of the day. And so when you think about a lot of our parents, they have their kids, but there's no manual for them and how to raise the kids. Now we can say the Bible, which we believe that is our manual. But a lot of our parents are having so many different kids, and they're going to different schools, and they having to run around. But like you said, that partnership is so important for them to understand. So I try to get parents to come in, because there's a lot of parents that want to learn as well. Some of them can't read. Some of them haven't got a associate's degree. So we create the community environment. Like our school, one of our schools, we're trying to make it where parents can come in and get, clothes, food, come into the classroom. One parent, she walked her student to each one of her classes because she wasn't going to class. She was tardy. She wanted to know why she's so tardy. So we have our parents to come in and see what we're doing. So a lot of our lady, whether it be teachers or staff, they're like mothers to our kids. A lot of us are like father figures. And so one thing I try to make sure is that our students have that one person in the school that they can go to. If they're about to cuss somebody out, if they're about to fight somebody, I say, hey, can you get Dr. McKenzie? I say, before you make that decision to act on it, can you call somebody first? And then with our parents, one parent was finna come up there. Phones is terrible. We didn't have phones in high school. We didn't have phones in middle school or elementary. Phones, they're texting, group texting. And they're talking about, this lady came up here and said, I'm about to fight. I don't even care what you got to say. And I said, well, ma'am, let me go get your child so I can have him explain exactly what took place. Now, keep in mind, we've already restored the situation. Your son is about to go home because he cussing at the teacher. And so we gave him an opportunity. And when I explained to her and he explained to her, she said, well, you know what? I apologize. I am so sorry. One thing is we're trying to really focus on is restorative, because a lot of our kids, once they get out in the world, they don't know how to have a conversation and work things out. You know, we had a situation with 2 different gangs. That was my first day of work last year. We had to sit them down and really found out it was a misunderstanding, but it was about to be a gang war. But we need to really focus on restorative practice and having conversation. Nobody talks anymore. Like when we was growing up, families would talk to each other down the street. You know, somebody had mashed potatoes, somebody had green beans, somebody had ham. We all ate together. That's not happening. So we're trying to bring it to the schools and have that family orientation.
Also, with that, Dr. McKenzie, now you speak about restoration, because once they get into the world, the police, they're not going to give them the opportunity to have reconciliation, because a lot of them now shoot, and you might be a hashtag. They don't want to hear your story. You know, we see it month after month. We're a hashtag, whether it's my source, Sandra Bland, Sandra Massey, Elijah McClain, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor. We can go down the list. And so I think that's very important that you teach them, those students, the skills of reconciliation, communication, because in the world, the world is not going to give them an opportunity.
You're exactly right. And we're creating an oasis or a more zen space within our courtyard. We're going to refurbish some benches, and it's going to be a restorative space where students can actually restore their own relationships. They can resolve their own conflict, you know. So we have to create that, but we have to model it first. And so one of the things, one of my friends came, I know you're going to trip out. He used to sing with Usher. So New Beginning, Usher was in New Beginning before he became Usher.
Right.
And so
Chattanooga history, Tennessee history.
Yes. And so I brought him in to talk to my mentees today, which is a 40 program that the mayor created. Brought him in to talk to him, and he kind of talked about situations where we were, him and another friend, that was in that same room, where they had odds, but it showed the kids that for 10 years they may have had odds. Now they're best of friends, and that resolution is so important. And he said, man, this guy can have anything he wants from me, you know what I'm saying, because we was able to resolve our conflict. But what the problem was, it was other people that was making them pit against each other. It had nothing to do with them 2 people. And so what I try to teach our students is that there are people that are out there that are going to pit y'all against each other until you get down and talk to that person face to face and really ask that person, what's going on? What happened? Those are the questions. Instead of saying, what's wrong? We need to say, what's happened? How can I help? How can I support? So that's the lingo and language that we have to use for our students and our adults.
Awesome. And then Dr. Wallace, once these our kids have made it through and survived kindergarten, middle school, high school, and they get to you at Fisk University, coming out of communities that experience disparities, how do you, in your higher academia space, break the ice and grab their mind and bring them in to a new space and environment for education?
Well, let me preface that with just how proud I am to be on this panel with these gentlemen, because I am telling you what I have learned in higher education is that there is absolutely no need for me if you did not have them, because they wouldn't get to college. And so sometimes I think the priority or the glamour is more at the higher education because of what we do and the prestige of the universities, not even realizing that if those students aren't prepared to get here, there's no purpose for me having a job. Mm-hmm. And they're doing the yeoman's work. And so to answer your question, when they get to me, what I do is I kind of do what I think that those did for me before. First off, I try to make the subject interesting. And I try to engage them not from a deficit perspective, but more of an enhancement perspective. That, okay, let's find out where you are. Okay, it might be behind the curve. I don't care. Let's start where you are. Just don't stay there. Famous African proverb that I live by, taught to me by Dr. Milner, who was one of my educators at Vanderbilt. You start where you are. Just don't stay there. And so what I try to do is find out where they are. I ask questions rather than I start dictating, because they may know things. Sometimes they know a lot, but they've never been challenged, or there's this expectation that there's not, what's there to achieve. So they're just like, whatever. They might be in college not because they want to be there, but because their parents forced them to be there. So they haven't really bought into the reason as to why. So what I try to find out is what are their interests and what is their why, and then try to facilitate connections between what I do and expose them to things that will challenge their thoughts, challenge what they can expect of themselves. And I share with them. I wasn't this child prodigy. I came from a deficit myself. And little known fact to many people, and it was funny, I was a commencement speaker. I was the keynote speaker for our opening convocation. And it was a proud moment for me because I've been there 24 years and that's the first time I did it. And I said to people, you think that I was always smart, and smart's a relative term that I don't use too much because, what does that mean? But I will say this. I applied to Fisk University coming out of high school. I was turned down. I applied to their summer research program when I was Grambling. I was turned down. One of my physics advisor didn't think I was cut out for physics. And he suggested, since you're in the marching band, change your major to music. So he didn't even believe in me, and he was black.
What?
But fortunately, it was an Indian professor that actually believed in me and said, Kent, you're going to have a degree in physics. And I said, how can you say that? And he said, because no matter how many classes I failed you, you always signed up the next semester. You never quit. And because you never quit, you will have a degree in physics. And when he said that to me, it literally changed the way that I looked at myself. And so that I carried with me for the rest of my career. That sometimes I just need to identify in a student to let them look in themselves and see something that they have never seen before. Because the beautiful thing is, once you see it, you can never unsee it. I hope that addresses your question.
Very well. And as you were speaking, I started thinking about my high school American history and economics teacher. And to this day, I want to say during the pandemic, I found him on Facebook. So he had not seen me since senior year of high school. And I was just catching him up on, school, joining the Navy, all that. And he was just like, wow. And I'm so thankful I was able to thank him because high school was very hard for me. And being in his classroom was the bright spot for me during that period of my life as a high school student, as a teen. And just his I won't say discernment, but his ability to see me and to make me feel seen and heard and encouraging and nurturing my intellect meant the world to me. And even throughout going to college and getting a master's degree, I always thought about him, and being able to finally tell him thank you for him just going beyond just the curriculum, going beyond the syllabus meant so much to me, and actually was one of those things motivating me in the back of my mind, because every time we would take an exam, he would call us, Miss So-and-so, Mr. So-and-so, and he would say, ladies, gentlemen, let's make A's. And every time I took a test in school or in college, I would say that in my mind, let's make A's. And that just stuck with me. And so to hear you say that, it made me think of him and just really brought a smile to my face, because I don't think a lot of times parents don't realize how important um the educator is in the classroom, because kids go through a lot. They don't talk about everything, and you having that discernment and being able to see the student, you don't know, that could be the word or line of encouragement that sparks the next greatest mind for the generation.
I could not agree with you more. And
Yeah.
a bit of irony in line with the statement, with the story you just told, for the advisor who told me I should change my major to music, here I am now, a tenured professor of physics and the dean of the graduate school at his alma mater. And so it just,
That'll preach. Anymore.
and it was because there was a professor. And in that time, it was not a professor. It was a professor of color. It was an Indian professor. But like you said, you will never know the one that you touch, that you will change their perspective and therefore the change in their trajectory of their career. So so it's like, I don't want those teachers of color who are not of color to think that we're saying that you're not valuable. You are, because you may be the only ones that care. But what we are saying in this discussion is there need to be more of us, because there is something about representation that you cannot fake that can have a profound effect on a student's sense of self-concept, and hence to see themselves in a role that they would normally associate with other, that they can enhance and be successful.
Very true. Because growing up, the only scientist I remember as a kid was Bill Nye the Science Guy. And so through our mutual connection, when I met Dr. Wallace, I was like, scientist? A black scientist? I know, like, so absolutely. And just one more question, just as we begin to wrap things up, I do have one final question for you all. Um, Climbing the ladder in the field within education, we see there is a difficulty as far as recruiting more Black men into the field of education, and then retention, particularly in urban communities. So I would like to ask each of you, what has that looked like for you? And then advice to Black men in education that are struggling to stay within the field, and also to give words of encouragement. Anyone can take it. Don't mind me.
I will say very briefly, if you are watching this podcast and you have a child that feels lost and is not living up to their potential, if you are a student and you feel that the smart ones are the other, I want you to understand something. It is not the other, it is you. My dad was an architect, even though I was such a poor performer in school. And I said, Dad, how is it that you understand calculus and all this math? I just don't understand it. And he said, Kent, the only thing that lies between the difference between you and me is time. And if you put in the time, you can understand things like I did. He said that if it was written by a man, it could be understood by a man. And so I had to stop. You have to change your perception. You have to change your perception that it's something that you can't do. And then you need to start surrounding yourself around like-minded people. Because they say you're the average of the 5 people you hang around the most. So we have to kind of get away from the idea, I want to fit in with everybody. And I understand, I was that age. We want to fit in. But what we have to start to learn is who you want to fit in with. And so we need to broker and leverage our powers, find the people, find your tribe, find those that are quirky like you. It's okay. But I just want you to know you're not alone. You can do it. Parents, go to this Adventure Science Center with your kid. Be amazed together. Be amazed together about science. Parents, if you can, go to those parent-teacher nights. Go to the science nights. So that you can see what your student is, your child is going through, so that you can have an idea of their day-to-day. And also, if this has to relate to what you said earlier, one of the things we have to do, we need to vote, because people spend money on what they value. And how we broker credibility is that when we vote, then politicians are going to start to listen to what you want so that they can stay in office. And you would have to say, I want our educators to be paid more. I want more resources going into our schools. I want you to bring more businesses to our neighborhoods, because it's the tax revenue that goes into our schools. It's a very big thing. It's not one silver bullet. But again, it starts with perception. And if we can start to change people's perception, we can start to change outcomes.
That's very good. And not just a vote on the presidential level, but actually the lower level and grassroots elections are actually more important when you're voting for your councilman, your sheriff, your judge, your mayor. Those things are very important. So absolutely. Marvin?
One thing I'll say that I would want the parents to know and the kids to know, that it's very important that we advocate for our kids. There's a lot that's going on, and I'm also Dr. McKenzie is at a alternative school, and so we have kids that are coming from their home school, but it only takes one thing for them to do, and they're ready to kick them out. And so I think it's very important that we as parents find out what's more important. I know we got to work. I know we got to pay bills. But at the end of the day, I feel like you'll be paying more or spending more money for counseling or for your child being in jail or what have you. I think it's really important that we understand the importance of advocating for our kids and listening to our kids, being there. Me being a father of two, they look at us like, oh, they're just another one. They ain't gonna pay attention to their child, but they know me because I call, I email. When I was in Tallahassee, I went to the school. I made sure that they understood that I'm going to be here for my kids and I'm going to advocate for them. I know their kids are sneaky, conniving, whatever, what have you. But at the end of the day, they do depend on us listening to them and trying to find out what's really going on. So I think it's really important that we advocate for our kids when it comes to education. Is so important. One last thing I'll leave with you all is I'm grateful for this opportunity. I'm so honored to be on this panel. I'm like Camille now. I want to talk to Wallace and McKenzie some more.
Please connect. I definitely want you all to connect offline.
I'm definitely coming to you said Chattanooga. I definitely want to come. I can do learn it Dress for Success. How about that? So we can teach them how to tie ties and hygienes and all that good stuff. But Wallace, I definitely want to get more in tune with STEM. I growing up, of course you want to be that cool guy. So deep down inside you're like, I really want to take on this project as far as an assignment that you may have doing science or what have you. But then you got your boys looking at you like, so it's just amazing that I do see and now know a Black scientist. I didn't either. My only
right, isn't it a flex?
Scientist I knew what was the cartoon character on? It was Doug the Scientist, something to that nature. But that was the only scientist that I really knew. I didn't know anybody else.
Jimmy Neutron. We had Jimmy Neutron.
Yes, Jimmy Neutron was one. Yes, but
I'm such a big kid.
This is so exciting. And I think we need to advertise this more And like you said, let people know that this STEM program is something that's really needed, because you have kids that may be ADHD or may be artistic, but they love doing STEM projects or what have you. So I think that will even help parents on how to deal with the kids at home, because they can come to school and be totally different from home. Johnny did such and such at the house. We haven't seen any side of that with Johnny on our campus. So I think that plays a big part, and I'm definitely looking forward to working with you all and being a part and trying to help change this statistics that we have dealing with our kids. We do need more black men, and we can't help them if we're not helping each other. Let's start there. So we have to put aside our macho man or our ego or what have you, and really dive in and try to see how we can come as one, so they can see us as one, so we can change what we see.
Awesome.
And again, thank you.
Of course, Dr. McKenzie.
I would just say I'm ready to collaborate. I'm crunk, but I'm gonna go a different way.
Not crunk. You
I'm
date
crunk.
yourself.
I went back, right?
That's old school.
Right. I want to go a different way, and I really want us to really talk to the young fathers, because I think that's where a lot of our fathers get stuck, because they end up having a baby outside of wedlock, and they're not with the woman, and end up getting kind of pigeonholed and never really feel that they're worth anything, or going off to college, or they feel like they can't, got to wait on their leg. I'm going to talk about leading by example. I was a young father, and I had my son before I went off to college. Like I said, had a 1.5, GPA, and ACT was terrible. But there was one woman, Mary Spawn. I said, anytime I have an opportunity, a platform to speak, I'm going to speak Mary Spawn's name, because this woman is the woman that drove me to my college and had me in her midst since I was 8 years old running track. But this woman drove me to my college in North Carolina, Barbara Scotia College. And that was my start. And what it was, my back was against the wall. So I want young fathers to understand that you have an opportunity to be great, regardless of the circumstances, situation that may have taken place of your life, not even having a father in your life, not even having a mother. I want to speak to the students that are in state's custody, the kids that have had to be removed from their families and they're in state's custody. You too have an opportunity to get education, because if you're touched by the state at any point, you have free education. The state will pay for it. So I want fathers to know, hey, you have a great opportunity to be a father to your child, to your daughter, to your son. Have a healthy relationship with your son or daughter's mother, and try to lead by example and show those expectations. Because what I've done with my sons, I have two sons, Christian and Kevin McKenzie Jr., one 27 and the other one just turned 16. And I'm telling you,
hold on, KJ is 20.
KJ is 27 going on 28 in November.
I remember when he never mind.
Was a baby. Yeah, exactly. You dating yourself. And so my friends, my new friends, I had my son on MTSU campus with me.
So we went to undergrad together. That's how we know each other.
Yes, we was at MTSU in 90. It was 97.
You don't have to call out years.
Oh, my bad. Okay, my bad. Okay. So I just wanted to really speak to, because I don't think that area of men gets spoken to, and I want to pour into them. I want to really enrich their spirit. I want to really encourage them. Man, you got it. You got to just allow God to show you what's in your path, and continue to follow that path. But all of us need to put our arms around these young men and really tell them that they can be fathers, they can be great men, and then show them how they can get an education. Because my back was against the wall, and I got, just like Dr. Wallace, I got denied at MTSU for grad school. But the Lord said, hey, I still need you to go on in there, and you getting your doctorate. I said, how am I get my doctorate and I got denied? Look at me now. That's all I'm gonna say.
Awesome. Excuse me. I want to thank each of you for joining me here. This has been a great conversation. And I appreciate, I know you all have very busy schedules, but just to say thank you to each of you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to sit down and join me here for this conversation. When I initially started my podcast, it was initially geared towards Black women, but it was just really in my mind that to create and carve out a space for our brothers as well. And since then, it has just really grown by leaps and bounds. And so I'm very intentional about ensuring that our brothers doing phenomenal things across the diaspora, they are spotlighted here. And I say all the time, Black women, we have, boss girl brunches and retreats and girls trips and weekends and all that, but we really don't have a healthy space for our brothers outside of maybe the barbershop. And so I really want to continue to open up my space to brothers doing great things in education and worlds of creativity, innovation, etc. So thank you to each of you. And I'm proud of all of y'all. Just to see what y'all have done is super amazing. So as we begin to wrap up, do you all have any takeaways or nuggets for the listeners and viewers? And then also, where can people contact you and reach you on social media or even book you for speaking offline?
I'll just quickly say it is a pleasure to meet you, gentlemen. We will exchange. We'll get we have a common person. We can get our information to each other. So I am a man of my word. I am coming down to Chattanooga. I will come to Atlanta. My contact information, you can email me at bwallace@fisk.edu. If you are interested in me coming to your school to speak or event, you can just reach out to me there. You can follow me on Facebook, Brian Kent Wallace. You just put that in, it'll get me. Instagram, I am Dr. BK Wallace. And also on TikTok, I am Dr. BK. So DRBK Wallace, the same as Instagram, is the same as TikTok. So thank you. And again, gentlemen, it has been such a pleasure. And thank you, Camille, for having me on your show. I am honored to be here in the presence of these esteemed gentlemen. It just gets me so excited to get back to work tomorrow and influence more minds.
You're welcome. And I definitely want to bring you back to highlight more areas as far as STEM and STEAM and put that out there. So I'll be contacting you as well. And I do love the fact that this has been like a D9 HBCU and we're right in homecoming season. So this is perfect.
Well, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'll say thank you, Camille, because you followed me through my education journey since you had your podcast. So I appreciate it.
Even though you were mean in undergrad and didn't talk to anybody, but whatever.
I had a child. No.
Siri played She Was My Child by Mary J. Blige.
No. So, guys, I really appreciate the opportunity to actually be on here with you all. Like I said, I look forward to working with you all and building that bond. I will say, you can find me at the Kevin McKenzie Show on Instagram, Facebook, Kevin McKenzie, LinkedIn, Kevin McKenzie, or you can email me at kdmckenziesr@yahoo.com. I would say I want each and every person, whether they're young, older, seasoned, how you may say, continue to follow your dreams, continue to pour into each other and allow yourself to be poured into. Every meeting is an opportunity, and every opportunity is a possible partnership or collaboration.
Marvin?
Again, Camille, thank you so much for seeing something in me to grace this podcast with these esteemed gentlemen. It was great meeting you all, listening to your stories, getting some nuggets myself, and I'm excited to get to work tomorrow so I can talk to one of our gentlemen there and see what we can do. If you see right behind me, I have a picture up. I have a nonprofit organization called the Kingsman's Club. And so we talk about, or we educate young men with grooming, dress for success, etiquette, financial literacy, the list goes on. But you can find me on Facebook at Marvin M. Boatman, Boatman, or you can find me on Instagram with _Boatman77. And you can email me if you would like for me to come be a part of any educational activities that you may have, or I can come to your school and teach some of the kids how to tie ties and talk about hygienes and some other things. But you can definitely reach me. My email is kingsmansclub17@gmail.com. That's KINGSMAN17@gmail.com. Again, fellas, I thank you all, and it was my pleasure being a part of this great podcast.
Wow, this was such a great conversation. I feel so enlightened and honored to see all of y'all grow in your industries. And I hope someone got something from this conversation, whether you watch now, catch the replay, or catch the streaming later on. Thank you all for tuning in. Next week, we're coming back with another great live episode of the Speaker Podcast. You can also follow me. I'm online as well. Wrong one. Camille Essick. I am on Facebook, YouTube. I have my website, CamilleEssick.com. And you can also send me an email at the speakerpodcast@gmail.com or info@Camille.Essick. So with that being said, this is Camille Essick. This is the podcast where innovators and critics connect. Be blessed. Good night. Bye-bye.